Ships don't choose ports based on distance. They choose based on where the cargo is going. And for most of the United States, California is actually the wrong answer. Which raises a strange question. If Los Angeles is the biggest port in America, why don't more ships go there? A port isn't a destination. It's an entry point into a supply chain. The cargo doesn't stop there. It keeps moving inland. So the right question isn't which port is closest to Asia, it's which route gets this container to its final destination the fastest. Once you think about it that way, the map flips completely. Start with the ocean crossing. Ships traveling from Asia to North America don't move in straight lines across a flat map. The shortest route curves north across the Pacific, and when you follow that curve, the first major coastline you reach isn't California. It's the Pacific Northwest. Seattle sits roughly 1,000 miles closer to Asia than Los Angeles does. At sea, that's about 2 days. And in shipping, 2 days isn't small. A large container ship can burn close to $100,000 a day in fuel. So choosing one port over another can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars on a single voyage. Before a ship even docks, routing through Seattle already has a built-in advantage. But that advantage alone doesn't explain the system. Because the real difference doesn't come from the ocean, it comes from what happens after the ship arrives. Here's where it actually matters. Because most cargo doesn't stay at the port. It moves inland to places like Chicago, Ohio, Indiana, and from the Pacific Northwest, there's a faster way to get it there. Containers coming into Seattle can be loaded directly onto trains that run across the northern United States, straight to Chicago and beyond. So now the math changes. Routing through Seattle instead of Los Angeles saves about 2 days at sea and then saves more time moving inland, which adds up to something like 3 to 5 days faster overall. And in logistics, that's enormous, because time isn't just time. It's inventory, it's working capital. It's whether goods arrive when they're needed or sit idle somewhere in the system. And that's what actually determines where ships go. Not just the distance across the ocean, but how fast the cargo reaches its final destination. So if Seattle is faster for most of the country, why is Los Angeles still dominant? LA doesn't win because it's closest. It wins because everything is already there. Because LA isn't just a port, it's an entire logistics ecosystem built up over a century. Ships, rail, warehouses, and customers all concentrated in one place. And that concentration creates something powerful: scale. The more cargo flows through LA, the more infrastructure gets built to support it. The more infrastructure it has, the more ships choose to go there. And the more ships that go there, the more efficient and competitive it becomes. It's a feedback loop. Scale creates gravity. And once that system is built, it's incredibly hard to replicate somewhere else. Especially when the market itself is right next to the port. For cargo going to Southern California, the journey is already over when the ship docks. But that advantage comes with a trade-off, because the bigger the system, the harder it is to absorb a shock. But if speed is what matters, then the logic doesn't stop in Seattle. It pushes even further north. There's a port in British Columbia called Prince Rupert. It's small, remote, and it sits almost exactly on the shortest route from Asia to North America. Ships don't detour to reach it, they're already there. It's not a stop along the route, it is the route. Compared to Los Angeles, routing through Prince Rupert can save nearly 3 days at sea. And when you combine that with fast rail connections inland, the total time savings to the Midwest can reach up to 8 days. 8 days faster! In modern supply chains, that's a serious competitive advantage. Not because the system is better built, but because the geography is better aligned. So, if it's faster in every way, why doesn't everything go through Prince Rupert? Because it has one problem. Everything depends on a single connection, one rail line. If that line fails, the entire route fails with it. No backup, no alternative path, the cargo just stops. Speed doesn't matter if the system can't move. And in global logistics, that's a risk most companies won't take. This isn't theoretical. In 2023, a labor dispute shut down ports in British Columbia for nearly 2 weeks, and that traffic that had been moving through Prince Rupert didn't wait. It rerouted south, to Seattle, to Tacoma, back to California, not because those routes were faster, but because they were safer. That's the trade-off. Prince Rupert offers maximum speed, but almost no redundancy. California is the opposite. Slower routes, yes, but multiple rail lines, highways, terminals, an entire system built to absorb disruption. And in global logistics, a system that keeps moving under stress is worth more than a system that's faster under perfect conditions. It's a trade-off. The question is, what happens when even California's redundancy isn't enough? And this trade-off became very real in 2021 when the system broke. At one point, more than 100 container ships were sitting offshore outside Los Angeles, waiting for a berth. Not hours, not days, weeks. Every one of those ships was carrying thousands of containers, furniture, electronics, holiday inventory, all of it floating offshore, going nowhere. The system had been running close to full capacity for years, and when demand surged, there was no room to absorb it. Ports clogged, the system didn't bend, it snapped. Containers stacked up, and cargo stopped moving. Transit times nearly doubled, and American consumers felt it. Empty shelves, delayed orders, prices rising on goods that were already manufactured, already shipped, already within sight of the coast, just stuck. And because so much of the country depends on Los Angeles, the disruption didn't stay at the port. It spread across the entire supply chain. So shippers started looking for alternatives. New shipments started moving north, to Seattle, to Tacoma, even to Prince Rupert. Not because those routes were better in every way, but because they weren't already at capacity. They had space. And in a system like this, space is what keeps everything moving. The Pacific Northwest didn't replace California, but it absorbed the overflow. And once that shift happened, some of it didn't come back. So this is what the system actually looks like. Not one best port, but a set of trade-offs. California wins on scale, infrastructure, and proximity to major markets. The Pacific Northwest wins on speed to the interior. Prince Rupert pushes that logic even further. The fastest route available, with the least room for error. And shipping lines don't pick one. They route each shipment based on what matters most: speed, cost, reliability, destination. When one part of the system gets overloaded, traffic shifts. When another becomes more efficient, volume moves. It's not a single pipeline. It's a network that constantly rebalances itself. And that's why the map is misleading. Because the map makes it look like California is the destination. But it isn't. The destination is inland: Chicago, Columbus, Cincinnati, the places that actually consume the cargo. Ships don't go to California because it's the closest. They go to California because the system was built there. And every time that system hits its limits, traffic moves north. Sometimes temporarily, sometimes permanently. Because the geography was always pointing there. The system is just catching up.